It's the Jersey Blitz, NJ.com's high school football podcast. Hello, Jersey football fans. I'm Dan Long, and on today's episode, I'll be joined by NJ.com football beat writers Ryan Patti, Donovan Hugel, Kevin Minnick, and Mike Kinney. And we'll talk a bit about the two monster non-public matchups from last week as Don-Bosco Prep beat Bergen Catholic and St. Peter's Prep outlasted St. Joseph Regional. We'll also have a roundup of teams on the rise in the Big Central. We'll take a look at one of the best rivalries in South Jersey. We'll also have a listen to an interview that our own Ryan Patti conducted with Don-Bosco Prep's head coach Dan Sabella following his big rivalry win. We'll have our weekly roundtable discussion on our NJ.com Top 20, as well as taking a look at some of the games that our writers are most looking forward to for this upcoming weekend. And we want you to be a part of our shows going forward. So if you want to ask a question of the guys and have them discuss it, please send your message on X with the hashtag Jersey Blitz. So starting off this episode, we welcome Donovan Hugel to the show. And Donovan, Don-Bosco Prep played a clean game in front of over 6,000 raucous fans in Ramsey last Friday night, and they made the winning plays down the stretch to hand Bergen Catholic their first in-state loss since 2022. How did the Ironmen get it done?
Yeah, when you look at what Don-Bosco did last Friday, just 201 total yards of offense. This was not a spectacular showing from the Ironmen, but it didn't need to be a spectacular showing when you think about, the how we previewed the game last week. It was on defense, the front seven needed to win that battle. That was the big advantage that they had over Bergen. On offense, they needed to find a balance of setting up sophomore quarterback Carson Shane for success while also not being too conservative. And, Shane only threw for 83 yards. He was 6 of 14, but he was a game manager, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. Like, he did not turn the ball over. His running backs, led the way at the end with 4 first downs to end the game with 6:42 left on the clock. So, again, not a spectacular showing, but Don-Bosco did everything that they needed to win the game. They did not turn the ball over, which was massive. In their 2 losses to Bergen last year, they turned the ball over 7 times. Ryan talked about that last week. And they avoided costly penalties. They avoided the turnovers. And yeah, I mean, at least on offense, again, not stellar, but they followed that correct formula in order to win this game, especially with Dante DeLuca and Kasai Thomas just chewing up clock behind a really talented offensive line.
So, Ryan, on the other side of the equation, all good things come to an end. If you're Bergen Catholic, your 28-game in-state win streak has now been snapped against the last team that defeated you in-state in your arch rival in Don-Bosco Prep. Is this freak out time if you're a Crusader fan, or is this everybody collect your breath, BC about to go on a bye week, and then we've seen in the past where they've made the necessary adjustments after a loss to become even better down the stretch?
No, it's not freak out time, Dan. The only freak out is probably Coach Vito on his team in the locker room. As you know, one of their mottos is tougher longer, and they were not tougher longer in this game. And I wasn't at this game. I had a wedding to go to. My buddy, funny enough, is a Bosco alum, so maybe this was in the cards the whole time. But I watched the stream, and I thought Bosco had its way with Bergen in the fourth quarter there. I haven't spoken with Coach Vito since before the game, but I would bet he's most upset that his offense didn't get the ball back after it got stopped in the red zone with almost 7 minutes left. So a majority of the fourth quarter was left, and Bosco ran out the clock there. And there's nothing that infuriates Vito more than, getting out physical and not being tougher. And that's what happened. Bergen wasn't tougher in the fourth quarter. And, there were a couple execution things, but I mean, not exactly. There was only one turnover, and it was on that 4th down play near the end zone. And I thought Bergen's defense, for the most part, Donovan mentioned it, only 200 yards. That's good defense. They gave up the one big play to Kasai Thomas. Couple other plays. I mean, there was a short field for that second touchdown Bosco scored, but Bergen actually outgained Bosco by almost 100 yards, and they outsnapped them by a wide margin. So, maybe you play Monday morning quarterback and say, what if Bergen got the 2-pointer? Then they're able to kick a field goal, to tie the game and maybe send it to overtime. But who knows if it even goes to overtime with how Bosco is moving the ball in that final drive. So stuff doesn't usually boil down to one thing, but this was a decent chunk of the game, 7 minutes. And it was tipped so heavily in Bosco's favor. Bergen couldn't get off the field. So I'm expecting pretty physical couple weeks of practice here for Bergen before they lace it up for Paramus Catholic next week.
It's fascinating, Donovan, to see how the storylines now change, where now Bosco, which was the team that needed to show something in these type of big games and these matchups against Bergen Catholic, now they're ruling the roost. They're in the number one spot in our ranking. The question is, can they maintain this? Does Don Bosco have what it takes to run through the gauntlet of the regular season? Well, they get a stiff test right away.
I think they do have the team to run the table. They got DePaul this Friday. I'll be at that game. And then they got Joe's the Saturday after that. Seton Hall Prep, Paramus Catholic. On paper, those are teams that Bosco is better than and they should beat. Then they close the season with Peters. Going back to the Bergen game just for 1 second, I think that with the skid that Bosco was on against Bergen, this was the type of game plan that they needed to just win this game. I don't know if this game plan is going to work another time against the DePaul, against the Joes, against the Peters, a second time around against Bergen. Like, this was just what they needed to win this game. And by all means, did they play well? Did they play great on the defensive side? Absolutely. Makai Allen, Jack Hinspitter with the interception in the fourth quarter. The run game was great. The O-line was great. Shane, again, executed, did not turn the ball over. But I think they do need to, they would like to see a little bit more from Shane. I don't think that he was going to light the world on fire in his first Bosco Bergen game, especially as a sophomore. I think if we all knew that he had that in him right away, he wouldn't have started the year as QB2 on the depth chart. But he did his job. The running backs did their job. DeLuca had over 4 yards a carry. Thomas had nearly 4 yards a carry. Combined, they were great, but I do think that they are going to need a little bit more from that offense over the next few weeks if they do want to run the table against the likes of a DePaul, of a Joe's, of a Peters, and potentially Bergen once again in the postseason.
And Ryan, is this now for Bergen Catholic exactly kind of what they want? They want to have that chip on their shoulder that they've used always as motivation. You don't have to go too far in the past to look at when they got thumped by Bosco in the regular season in 2022, 31-7, and were kind of seen as the clear underdog going into that rematch in the state finals. And then Bergen Catholic turned that into a 45-0 win. Now, as Vito Campanelli, is he stressing to his team, we're the hunter and no longer the hunted?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a motivating factor. And I mean, you work in the building at Bergen, those guys love having a chip on their shoulder, love having any reason to be motivated. And, if I were to pick a game, obviously we all picked Bergen, we were wrong. But if I were to pick a game, and I wanted to, I wasn't going to pick against Bergen until they lost, just because, I had to see it to believe it. I mean, that's just the run that they've been on. But if I were to pick any game, it probably would have been this game. I thought there was a path, to Bosco winning. You kind of saw it against East St. Louis. East St. Louis and most of that game was moving the ball on Bergen. There was reason to believe that a final drive like the one Bosco went on was possible. But, this is, like you mentioned it, Dan, like this is going to be motivating for them. And, they couldn't have, won every game from here on out, like the next couple seasons. Like they weren't going to run the table and go like 48-0 or anything like that. They were going to lose at some point. This happened to be the week they lost. And I think you're going to see a really motivated team, a team that's going to, try to run the ball better than they did. They still ran it at over 4 yards a clip, I believe, but they're going to continue to try to run the ball and just assert themselves physically and not let something like this happen again. They said it a couple years ago when they lost to Bosco. This is never going to happen again. And now they're probably going to end up saying the same thing. Like they're not going to let this happen again.
And Donovan, we were treated not only to that type of matchup in 1 versus 2, but another top 5 showdown in the non-public ranks where it was St. Peter's Prep, again, continuing this redemption tour that they're starting to orchestrate this year in a thrilling come-from-behind fashion, knocking off St. Joe's at home in Hudson County. And St. Joe's played the game without its top 2 offensive players and lost only by 1. What do we learn from that matchup that saw the Marauders top the Green Knights?
I think from a Joe's point of view, we learned that they are still a damn good football team, even without Lamar Best and Nate Bailey in the lineup. A loss is a loss, and no team is ever going to be happy about a loss, especially an Augie Hoffman coach team. I'm sure Ryan's brother can attest to that. But I also think that, Joe's isn't going to be playing the what if game if Lamar Best had been in the lineup, if Nate Bailey were in the lineup, and both were out injuries. They still played, a caliber of football where they could have won. Keyshawn Bryant, 4 touchdowns. Mason Geis, who I don't think you're going to find many better backup quarterbacks in the state than him, threw for 185 yards. They didn't have a touchdown through the air. But again, a loss from 1 point, but there's going to be moments that they want back. They had the lead very, very late into this game. And you can only wonder if they would have won. I'll play the what if game. You know what I mean? Like if they would have won, had they run more clock, had they converted on a third and short. I believe it was a third and 4 with less than 5 minutes to go. Could they have pulled off, a Bosco type of drive to end the game? Would it have been different in my point of view if Nate Bailey and Lamar Best were in the lineup? I do think so. But again, Peters is still a really good team, and Ryan's going to talk about that in a second. And this is something that we talk about a lot in our top 20 discussions. This was one of their most this is one of their most important games of the season. Did they win? No. Did they perform very, very well while shorthanded? I don't think any of us could say no to that. I think they did play very well. They are on a bye this week. Hopefully that gives Best and Bailey a little bit more time to recover. And the word on the street is that they will be back soon. Yeah, there's no time to dwell on what's happened, no time to dwell on a what-if game for Joe's. But, I still think we learned that they are a very good team in a 1 point loss, and they're going to be hungry to get back to it in 2 weeks against Bosco.
And a quick follow-up here for you, Donovan. I do remember when we were talking about these different things for last week's episode, it was stressed to you that those two guys were going to be healthy enough to play against St. Peter's. So it's kind of an interesting question that's going to always lurk out there, especially with how important those two are to that nucleus. How serious are those injuries, and what type of player are you getting back? Because Lamar Best obviously had his injury last year with his collarbone, and then if this is an ankle injury to Nate Bailey, the question is still going to be, especially with Don Bosco Prep looming in a couple of weeks' time, are they actually going to be back in the lineup, or is this just, again, coach speak?
I don't think anybody knows that question except Nate Bailey, Lamar Best, Augie Hoffman, and the rest of Joe's roster. And to be completely honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just Augie who knew the answer on Joe's coaching staff. I think they are missing a quarterback who can really put the ball in tight spots on deep balls to Nate Bailey. They're missing, I said it last week. I think if Nate Bailey was 3-4 inches taller, and I believe most of us on this staff believe that if he was taller, he'd be a Power 4 recruit, but he's not. He's smaller, so he's going to Harvard. But this guy can break open a defense in a matter of seconds, and Lamar can hit him in a matter of seconds, and if you give him any open room. So I think you're missing one of the most dynamic 1-2 punches in the state on offense, which is you give an inch to a defense like Bosco, and they're just going to take that an absolute mile. So I think you are missing like a very, very, very dynamic part of the offense, especially with Lamar. Lamar can move out of the pocket as well. So yeah, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. I think that they're going to, the bye this week is huge for that, so that, I don't have to ask Hoggy if they're going to play this weekend, and he tells me they are. But yeah, I think it's going to be huge for them. Again, the word on the street for at least Nate was that it was a high ankle sprain, and those are usually several weeks to recover from. I would love to see them on the field against a defense like Bosco. Will it happen? I can't say for certain right now on this podcast, but I would love to see it happen, and they are missing one of the best 1-2 punches in the state every time they step out onto the field with those two out.
It'll be fascinating to see how healthy those two can get leading into that game. And Ryan, on the other side of the equation, we've talked a lot about St. Joe's, and rightfully so, but this St. Peter's prep team, they are for real. They are gritty. They are resilient, and they went for it all. And Coach Richie Hansen got that big win that he was looking for at home, and the Marauders stayed perfect on the season.
Yeah, I mean, sure, Best and Bailey didn't play for St. Joe's. And by the way, Donovan, I heard that it might not be a high ankle, so we might see him on the field, but we'll see. I mean, turned his ankle pretty good, and, Lamar fell on his shoulder pretty good, but we'll see. I mean, they're going to have some time to rest, but, I mean, what a win, even with the circumstances for St. Peter's, going for 2 in the lead. I don't think it's crazy to say this. This is the biggest win for the program since the last time they went for 2 in a huge spot, at MetLife Stadium there with Taj Bullock to beat Don Bosco in 2019. So a win of this magnitude, has been a long time coming for St. Peter's. Remember, these guys who are on the field now were on the field 2 years ago. Tyler Bell, Hunter Watson, Jordan Rodriguez, and they went 1-9. They had one of the worst seasons the school has ever seen. But they trusted the process here. They let these kids grow. They didn't, overturn the roster. And look at them now. I mean, they're very much a title contender this season. Like I'm sold. I'm completely sold. I still have a little bit of reservation for the defense and if it's good enough to win a title, but they're taking the ball away. I mean, they have 12 takeaways, and Tyre Clark has 2 touchdowns. He has a return for a touchdown, then a defensive touchdown. So at the very least, I think St. Peter's is doing enough on both sides of the ball to be in these games in the postseason with chances to win. And they'll be at the Kelly Athletic Complex on Saturday to play Seton Hall Prep. I'll be there. And I'm looking forward to that one. It's a revenge game for Jalen Bullock for Seton Hall Prep, but also the chance for St. Peter's here to improve to 6-0 and continue this season that's been many years in the making for them.
So 2 monster non-public matchups from last week, and it was fun to talk all about that. And we'll see again what happens going forward if Don Bosco can continue that incredible momentum that it earned with the rivalry win, and is St. Peter's going to keep that engine going themselves into big wins for this week ahead. So now we bring on to the show Mike Kinney to talk to us about the Big Central Conference and that roundup of so many big-time teams that are starting to have their opportunities, like you predicted, to improve their resume, Mike, to get into the top 20. One of those teams I'm going to be seeing up close and personal on Friday is St. Thomas Aquinas, as we're going to be covering their game as one of our broadcast games of the week against Paramus Catholic. It was a juicy matchup last year, and the Trojans now get to host that game this year.
Yeah, Dan, even juicier now because Chukwuma Odo doesn't play for St. Thomas anymore. He plays for Paramus Catholic. He scored 2 touchdowns. He was the guy last year who came close to St. Thomas beating Paramus Catholic. He rushed for 2 touchdowns, was a bear between the tackles, was very tough. Paramus Catholic probably hated and loved the way this kid played football, but now St. Thomas is going to have to hate the way the kid plays football. He's coming back from an injury, and he's healthy now. He played a little bit last week, and seems to be restored just in time to play against his old team. But his team is surprising me in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're ready to take on Chukwuma and the Paramus Catholic team. What they have to What I think the difficult part for St. Thomas is Paramus Catholic's schedule against St. Thomas's schedule. One of the problems that always seems to surface for St. Thomas when they get to the playoffs is that their regular season schedule just doesn't compare to the competition that they play in the state tournament. Now, they have upped it considerably in the last couple of years, but it's still not what, Paramus Catholic and the Power Fives play. So that can become an issue, but here's an opportunity, and they were smart to play them last year. Here's an opportunity for them to see a team that's in the midst of all that in the Super Football Conference. And I think they're ready because I think mentally they've shown that the defensively they're able to handle a lot of things, and offensively I love the way the sophomore Zymir Weaver has come around as a team leader, as a engineer of the offense. He played a couple games last year as a freshman. He's the starter now, and he's doing a real good job. And Ian Robinson is doing a really good job of leading the ground game, which I wasn't sure St. Thomas was going to have much of this year because of guys they lost to graduation and also to transfer. So the way Weaver's leading the team, the way Robinson's running the ball, and also they're showing they have a pretty good receiving core, and I thought that was going to be suspect too with Josiah Zayas transferring from St. Thomas to Piscataway. So I think Paramus Catholic, it's going to be just like last year. Paramus Catholic is going to be in for a team that has speed and ability and is really determined and really is looking to make that turn and become a team that can really play at the end of the season and contest against some of those better teams. Here is a great proving ground for them.
I'm fascinated to see what we have in store for us on Friday night with that game. And St. Thomas Aquinas, last year they thought maybe they were underseeded. Well, this is the chance to impress the committee with a big win potentially against the Paladins at home on Friday night. Mike, when we talk about great rivalries around the state, Sayreville-Piscataway, that's got to be one of them, and it's going to be continuing to be that way in the Big Central as both teams combine 9-1 heading into their game.
Yeah, Dan. Before the Big Central began in 2020, the GMC. This was always one of the premier matchups. There's a game you never wanted to miss: Sayreville and Piscataway. The fans come out. These are two teams with historically the most speed, the best athletes among the teams in the GMC, and nothing has changed a whole lot in the Big Central. I mean, there's so many more big teams. There's so much more speed. There's that, but right now, these are two teams kind of back on the rise. Piscataway, we know a couple years ago had a rough time. They didn't play during COVID. They went 0-8. They went 0-9 the next season. They've been slowly but steadily on their way back. Same thing with Sayreville. Sayreville had 2 down years the last 2 years. And Piscataway enjoyed that down year last year. They beat Sayreville 42-13. That's not going to happen this year. I really don't see that happening. I think Sayreville's a much better team than they were. It starts with Sean Jackson, a senior running back for them. He's rushed for almost 1,000 yards already, has 11 touchdowns. Piscataway is going to deal with a kid who has great speed and has power between the tackles and can get outside. Thing is, Piscataway has outstanding speed that has only been strengthened by the addition of Mikai Simmons and Josiah Zayas, 2 speedsters who became eligible last week for Piscataway, both transfers from St. Thomas Aquinas. So Sayreville's going to have to deal with even more speed now in Piscataway's secondary and their linebacking core. So, but Sean Jackson, great job running the ball. He's going to need a little help, though. He's going to need a little help from Dion Osei and Sherwin Apaya running the ball to kind of, to take some of the attention off him. And Tyler Butka looking to get a big game for quarterback. The one thing for Sayreville, I don't think they played quite the schedule that Piscataway has. I think Piscataway's played a little tougher schedule. I think that's going to be a factor here. But yeah, like I said, with the addition of Zayas and Simmons, Piscataway now is a much deeper team, a much faster team, much more dangerous, explosive team than they were, and they already were explosive and dangerous. Landon Purnell at quarterback, he's only a junior, but he's in his 3rd year starting. He's a real team leader. Sean Love is turning into a real star as a receiver and a defensive back. Donald Young is a kid with a lot of experience. He can go catch the ball and he can go stop the ball off the defensive line. And guys like Zara Young and Amari Bowers are both outstanding defensive players that Sayreville is going to have to deal with. So I see this as one of those great games. Last year was an aberration as far as how this rivalry goes. This, I think, is going to be right back to being down to the wire. Fantastic game that people are going to be talking about for the next couple of weeks.
And a fascinating matchup also in store for us as the Super Football Conference's West Orange team that has won 4 in a row since we broadcast their 10-7 loss against Shabazz. They'll now travel to Maloney Stadium to take on 11th-ranked Phillipsburg, who has just been dominant so far with their run game this season. This is a matchup that has gone both ways over the last couple of seasons. What do you see on the horizon with this one, with West Orange taking on Phillipsburg?
Yeah, I see. West Orange has tremendous speed in their secondary and really tough linebacking core. And what they have to do is they have to stop that run and force the sophomore, Dominic Bracco, the quarterback. They have to force him to be more active in throwing the ball. He has shown in limited exposure as a passer, he has shown a real ability to find his receivers, a real ability to stay cool in the pocket. But West Orange has the speed off the edge, and they have the talent and the size on the line of scrimmage and the speed on the perimeter to really close off this running game. I think Sam Deck is doing a tremendous job of running for Phillipsburg, but Peteburg's going to see speed that they really haven't seen through most of the season. West Orange is a really fast team. I mean, that West Orange Shabazz game was played at 110 miles an hour. There's no question about it. And Peteburg's got to deal with that. West Orange wants to force this young sophomore Bracco to throw the ball, and their secondary will try to take care of that. One of the receivers that Dom Bracco has, and it's got to be nice to have a brother on your side, is Mike Bracco, a senior who caught 2 touchdown passes from Dom last week. And is a very good receiver, and that's a big help when your brother's running pass routes that you've seen him run for 18 years. Well, I guess for Dom, 16 years. He's not 18 yet. But yeah, this should be a great game. It was last year. 21-14. Peterborough pulled it out last year, but that game was in West Orange. Anybody who's been to Maloney Stadium knows that Maloney Stadium in Peterborough is a different animal altogether. When you go there, it's different. It's like going to Pennsylvania to play a football team. The band never stops playing. The place is packed. There are people there with reserved seats that they wait online for before the season. It is an outstanding atmosphere at Maloney Stadium. And when you're the visiting team, it usually takes you a quarter to deal with it. And it sometimes takes you more than a quarter to deal with the noise cascading down from the stands as you're trying to call your signals or make your checks, because Peterborough, it isn't on your offense. So always an exciting atmosphere, and just should be a really fun game at Maloney. And if West Orange can deal with this and come out with a win, I think we're going to see great things from West Orange the rest of the season.
Should be a fun one there, and a couple other fun games to keep an eye on in the Big Central. Now looking at South Jersey football, we'll bring on to the show Kevin Minnick. And Kevin, another big win for Burlington Township this season after they got another test. And they'll have another one on the horizon as well. Burlington Township, they're the real deal this season.
Yeah, Dan, I think with Burlington Township, it started in week 0 with that opener against Passaic Tech, and it opened a lot of people's eyes. Maybe not so much that they won the game, but the fact that they won the game by 34 points. I think that really kind of jumped out at a lot of people as far as what maybe this team was capable of doing this season. And the schedule hasn't really been all that difficult for them. The 3 games after Passaic Tech were against teams that have really struggled. And if you look at the score and you kind of follow it along a little bit, Burlington Township did what they should have done to those 3 teams. And that's, that put some points on the board. Let's just put it that way, and win the game decisively. Last week I think last week was probably arguably their best opponent of the season in Delran. Another undefeated team coming into that game, and Burlington comes out with another W to go 5-0. So, the schedule is going to get a little tougher for them, I think, in the next couple of weeks. And then obviously when the tournament comes around, they'll have to take it up another level. But for right now, I think Burlington Township is playing pretty good football. They've got a freshman at quarterback now, last name by McNair. I'm sorry, I don't have his first name in front of me, but doing some nice things. A running game with Aiden Binns, a junior who's kind of put himself into the mix as far as the better running backs, at least in South Jersey this season. And another talented freshman in Gerald Sackey, who has really stretched the field for them, and I believe he's got 9 or 10 touchdown catches already. So, they're a team to watch. Big game coming up against Burlington City, this weekend, another undefeated team. So we'll kind of see how things go for them.
Winslow once again flexed its muscles down in South Jersey, taking on Millville last week. What do you see from Winslow here after they've had a nice response after losing those 2 nationally ranked opponents early on this season?
Yeah, Dan, I think it's important to just touch on Winslow just for a brief moment. Still the top ranked public school in the state. Coach Bill Belton, and as we talked about the last couple of weeks, has kind of been frustrated with their lack of success to start games. They've come out sluggish, slow. The execution hasn't been there. That changed last week against Millville. They came out, scored on their first 2 possessions, marched the ball down the field. They went to a shorter passing game, which then opened up the big play for them. Winslow likes to put the ball in the air, and they like Jalen Parker to watch Jalen Parker throw the ball 40, 50, 60 yards at a clip. And the short passing game allowed their receivers to do a little catch and run. get themselves in better field position, and then that kind of opened things up for longer passes. They had a couple of 30-yard, 40-yard touchdown passes, a couple of real nice catches by Nikir Helton and Quade Hendricks. So I think they got themselves back on track last week. Obviously, the schedule is never going to allow them to take any time off and take their foot off the pedal at any time. They'll go into Camden on Saturday, and if they can perform the way they did against Millville, even if it becomes a little closer of a game, I think Coach Bill Belton may smile before the game is over, because he certainly never smiles during a game.
And also, Kevin, you have the red-hot West Deptford, undefeated on the season at 5-0, set to take on Haddonfield in another edition of what many believe is South Jersey's best rivalry.
Yeah, it is clearly it's one of these rivalries that transcends all sports. Every game between these two schools, no matter what the sport, you hate to say that, schools hate each other, but these schools, let's just say these two schools strongly dislike each other. West Deptford's undefeated at 5-0. To be honest with you, their schedule hasn't been very difficult. They should have been 5-0 at this point anyway. But what they've done is they put up a ton of points. They went in the last week as the leading team in the state. Glassboro put up a few more points than they did last week, overtook them a little bit, but West Deptford is still scoring, in the neighborhood of 45 to 50 points a game. I don't think they do that this weekend against the Haddonfield team that, has had their number for the last several years. But, this is an opportunity for West Deptford to prove itself, to show that its first 5 games are, not a fluke, that they are as good as the record is, that they are able to execute and play very well. So Haddonfield coach Frank Delano will be ready for them, no doubt about it. But this is a game that will draw the fans. I expect a huge crowd at West Deptford. And it's just that type of rivalry that it's one of them deals where, even though both teams are winning this season, you kind of throw the records out the window and kind of let just sit back and watch the game evolve.
So it's going to be fun to see how all those teams are going to be faring this week down in South Jersey, especially in that rivalry game. Will West Deptford remain undefeated, or will Haddonfield have their biggest win of the year so far? So at this point, we now are treated to a special news segment here, as our own Ryan Patti had a chance to sit down with Don Bosco Prep head coach Dan Sabella to talk all about his team's big win over previous #1 Bergen Catholic here on the Jersey Blitz.
How's it going, everyone? We're joined by head coach Dan Sabella from Don Bosco, the first ever guest on the Jersey Blitz, and rightfully so, because this past Friday was a pretty big deal. His Ironman defeated Bergen Catholic in a 14-9 final on Friday in Ramsey and ended the Crusaders' 28-game in-state win streak. Coach, this win, the way you guys got it done, jumping out 14-0 early, taking care of the ball how you did, playing defense how you did, the final drive to put the game away. I mean, I'm sure there were some hair-raising moments for you in the second half, but did this go as close to the script as you would have hoped?
Well, you mentioned it. There were a lot of components that factored into it. And we were really proud of our guys' effort. It just started with how hard we played and how well we played together. It was a true team win. We got contributions from so many different areas, so many different people. And I think you said it, Ryan, like taking care of the ball was crucial for us. Winning the turnover battle was something we really focused on all week. We were +1. It wasn't a huge turnover in the game, but us taking care of the ball was very important.
Now, it was a 28-game in-state win streak for Bergen, and all 6 of us picked against you guys for a reason. It's not a slight at you guys. It's just the respect level we had for Bergen. Talk about the mountain, it's been to climb to beat a team of that caliber, and just the job that they did over those 28 games in-state, just the preparation that went into this game.
Yeah, listen, it's a big rivalry, as you know. It's a game that I think both teams have circled on their calendar as soon as the schedule comes out. And, a lot of times you throw out the record, you throw out, whatever streaks are involved and whatnot, and it really comes down to who wants it more. It was a tremendous atmosphere being home, and the fans were all fired up. We had a beautiful night, and it was a really hard fought football game, like it usually is. It was a slugfest.
Now your front seven, the experience you got up front on the O-line, skill position guys both ways. I mean, I could talk forever about just the sheer talent on your team, and the 2019 team you had was real good, made the finals. And we're only 4 games in here, but where does this roster stack up for you? Is this one of the more talented teams you've had across, all the stops you've been at?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, like you said, we're 4 games in here, but we really feel good about the team we have. We have some depth in positions. We have some guys who've put in tremendous off seasons preparing for this year and have been waiting for opportunities. So I think we'll all be able to answer that question a little bit better 8 weeks from now, but we really like the team we have, and we think we're just scratching the surface of how good we can be.
Now, we've talked about the talent here, the character of this team. You win 2 close games. You win at Melissa. You win this game. What have you learned just in short time about the guts and grit of your team, just in a couple weeks?
Yeah, they're a tight-knit group. That only happens if you're tight and you believe in each other, and you never give up. And we talked a lot about the Melissa game this week leading into the Bergen game, because down 10-0 at halftime, there was not one guy in that locker room who was doubting anything or thought the game was over or was looking to pack it in. It was like it is every week. It's 0-0. We got another half ahead of us, and let's get this thing done. And we just want to keep riding that type of mentality.
Now, you mentioned turnovers being something you focused on. I think you guys got outnumbered in the turnover battle coming in 10-0 the last 4 games over the 4 games you lost in a row. What else did you focus on aside from turnovers? Any keys to victory you focused on?
Definitely penalties. Definitely really, listen, when you're playing a really good top caliber team, right, you can't hurt yourself. You're just feeding into giving them advantages, which you can't do. So, eliminating penalties, really restricting penalties and eliminating turnovers was a huge focus. Tackling, our defense and special teams tackled pretty well. And we talked about explosives. We got a couple. Kasai Thomas' explosive play on the screen was a big momentum play in the game. So we felt we needed to make a couple of explosive plays. And then look, what the offensive line did to kind of close the game out was really, really impressive. Really proud of those guys and the running backs and the tight ends, and just being able to grind out some first downs and run that last 6 minutes and change off the clock was something definitely the guys are feeling really good about.
And talk about that defensive stand right before that final drive. I wasn't there. We had Jason Bernstein and Luis Torres there. Getting that stop where, I mean, those are the plays that Bergen's made for years now, and you guys made a stand there. Just talk about the job you did there.
Tremendous job, really. Especially they had a penalty on I don't remember, it was 3rd or 4th down to kind of move them. It gave them a 4th and short. Right. Actually, it was 4th down. We got an interception for a touchdown. Actually, that was called back on a defensive hold, and it goes from whatever it was 4th and 13 to 4th and 3, and then our guys stop them on 4th down. So just a lot of guts, a lot of heart, and just the refuse to lose attitude. That's how we're playing. And our kids, our leaders over there are really, everybody's holding each other accountable and playing for each other.
Right. And then one more question about Friday's win before we talk about DePaul a little bit. I just want to say this first before I ask you the question. I believe you and the other SFC non-public coaches face an unfair amount of pressure to win. And, you don't have to speak on that, but I just want to put that out there because I don't think people understand it. And it's something that I definitely feel strongly about. And that said, you've won titles at Paramus, Pagoda, Paramus Catholic, and winning anywhere, feels great. But I think we could both agree at Don-Bosco, like as we saw on Friday, the highs are just super high, right? 6,000 tickets sold. Party on the field after the game. Take me inside the Don-Bosco community here. How much does Friday mean to this program?
Yeah, listen, the tradition that's been established here and the support that you get from, parents, student body, all the faculty here. It's a special place. It really is. It's really enjoyable to be a part of it, and that motivates our staff. That motivates our guys. We want everybody to enjoy it. We want to win for everybody. And like you said, Friday night was really, really fun and amazing, and it was a big step for us to get to where we want to be.
And then this week, quick turnaround, DePaul, number 3 team in the state, and obviously St. Joe's is after that, so it's a gauntlet for you guys, but the focus right now is DePaul. You guys played a close game with them last year that could have easily went your way. Just a couple plays decided that one. Talk about this matchup and what we can expect on Friday and win.
Going on the road, first of all, going up there, not an easy place to play. They got a tremendous quarterback, right? That kind of runs the show. Things revolve around him offensively. Some good talent on both sides of the ball, and they always play hard. They're always going to be a feisty team. And listen, they like you said, they got us the last 2 times we played them. So we're plenty motivated. We're looking to get back out there and like we said earlier, get better. We're not looking to. Last week's over as far as we're concerned. I mean, it's Tuesday morning here. We're still talking about it, but our guys aren't talking about it anymore. We're looking forward to this Friday night.
And then lastly, just piggybacking off of that, the state of this league right now, you look at, I mean, obviously you guys, big win on Friday. We know how good Bergen is over the last couple years. St. Joe's, DePaul, St. Peter's. What do you make of just the state of, SFC non-public football right now?
I mean, listen, been in this league now for a bunch of years, and you can't take anybody lightly. It's really, really top-notch football, well-coached teams, talent spread out all over the place. If you're going to overlook anybody, you're going to get, you're going to get knocked off because the kids love football. They love to compete, and I think the parity and the success that a lot of programs are having is healthy for the league, and it just makes for great matchups.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's head coach Dan Sabella from Don Bosco. His number 1 ranked Ironman will take on number 3 DePaul on Friday at Alumni Field in Wayne. Should be an awesome game between 2 championship level teams, and we're very much looking forward to that and to what's ahead. Coach, thanks for your time during what's got to be a busy stretch here in your schedule, and good luck on Friday.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on, man. Have a great day.
So we thank Coach Sabella for taking the time to join us and to join Ryan with that talk all about that big win for now the newly minted number 1 ranked team in our NJ.com top 20. So that segues us into our usual roundtable discussion about our top 20. And starting things off, Ryan, you have DePaul staying put at number 3 despite that big win by St. Peter's Prep over St. Joe's. And I know that was a big topic of discussion between you guys when you come together with one another about the top 20 in the state, as well as Paramus Catholic. You mentioned it. You have to win to stay in the rankings. PC was not able to do so, and now PC falls out. What about those maneuverings and why you have the Spartans staying locked in at number 3?
Yeah, Dan, it was a hot topic, and I was pretty passionate about DePaul staying put at 3. Well, moving up 1 spot to 3, I should say. Their lone loss was out of state, a 1-point loss to Good Counsel from Maryland, a top 100 team in the country. And they lost that game on an extra point, but that wasn't necessarily the debate. It was more so about rewarding St. Peter's for a big win, which we tend to do in our rankings. And it certainly was a big win, but I've had eyes on both teams. And I mean, once again, DePaul doesn't have Desi Jones or Nolan James or Elijah Burris, but they're explosive again this year. They have an offense. Derek Zammit, all-state quarterback, Washington commit, 4-star recruit. And they've taken it to St. Peter's in recent years. And obviously it's a new year, but they're also defending at a really high level, which we're not used to seeing from DePaul. Logan Nagel has 10 sacks already. I mean, he's the Pitt commit. He's been phenomenal. He's invading backfields, doing it against both the run and the pass. And this is one of their best defenses in some time. So I think the eye test, I'm just seeing it a little more from DePaul than St. Peter's. But, DePaul plays Don Bosco this week, which Donovan's going to talk about here later in the episode. And we don't like doing hypotheticals with the rankings, but, I'd like to think that if they beat Don Bosco, very good chance they go to number 1. But if they lose, they're probably going to fall behind St. Peter's anyway. So, yeah, and guess what? I mean, DePaul's going to play St. Peter's on the 17th of October. So, we're going to find out who exactly is better then. But, for now, I think DePaul at 3 is fine, and it's going to sort itself out here in the next couple of weeks. And, as for Paramus Catholic, they're 1-4 now. They had to fall out of the rankings. We kind of took it week by week with them. And after a 4th loss, and they've been competitive losses, they went toe-to-toe with Iona Prep, even Iona Prep, a top 100 team in the country. They went back and forth, but the bottom line is they're 1-4. They haven't won enough of those games. If they're 2-3, maybe they're in. They're probably in if they're 2-3. But as Mike mentioned, they get Aquinas. They're going to have opportunities to get back in the rankings. A lot of tough games ahead. They play Bergen Catholic after Aquinas, so it's really just murderer's row for them with this schedule. And we're going to see if they answer the bell here. They're healthier than they were a few weeks ago. Odo's back. He had an ankle injury to start the season in week 0 against St. Peter's Prep. They're healthier now. We're going to find out about the Paladins. But Donovan, what do you make of the move we made there? I know you were kind of in my corner with making DePaul number 3.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I do think that, it does make sense to keep DePaul at 3 and rewarding them. Like you said, Logan Nagel, 10 sacks. I think the defense, I have it here somewhere, they already have 6 forced turnovers this season as well. And just to, tease that Bosco matchup a little bit, Bosco hasn't faced a quarterback as seasoned as Derek Zammit yet this season. I think, big plays have hurt Bosco against DePaul each of the last 2 seasons, and Zammit is very capable of making big plays. Just to talk about DePaul's offense for a second. Both of those wins over Bosco the last 2 seasons have come by a point, and Bosco's going to have to limit some of those big plays this year, especially against a quarterback as good as the Washington commit in Zammit. But, I do support DePaul staying at 3 over Peters. I think dependent on, it was pretty dependent on that Joe's Peters game of what happened. But DePaul has really, taken care of business against the teams that they've needed to take care of business against this year, and we've rewarded that for them. And to me, that is the correct decision.
Kevin, in looking at the top 20 yourself down in South Jersey, Rancocas Valley, they lost last week without their quarterback. Camden now with that win, they're back in the mix. And then you have St. Augustine, who is absolutely banged up, but they just keep on finding ways to get it done. Where do you see a lot of these ranked teams in South Jersey? Do they have a little wiggle room, and do they have a pathway to keep on moving up? And do you feel that sometimes they should be moving down, even despite some injuries?
Yeah, I think there's room for movement. Obviously, see how things pan out. But the situation with RV was, this past week they took a pretty decent hit. They fall to Camden 8-6 in a game where offense, it just never happened. Neither team really could get anything going. So if you like defensive football, which I don't know how many people go to games to see a field goal or 2 touchdowns like that. But, RV struggled. If you want to, the coach, Garrett Lucas, he was happy with the way the defense played, because Camden does have some talented athletes, and to hold that, that offense to 8 points, was pretty big. He just needed to score on his side. And, he's of the philosophy that you've got to put about 20 points on the board every week to give yourself a real shot of a win. And that just didn't happen. They had an opportunity to tie the game. It was late in the 4th quarter when they scored their touchdown, and, they just could not get the 2-point conversion. Jaden Steely came and really knocked the ball out of the receiver's hands late to preserve that. And, that's a huge win for Camden. And, Camden vaults up to number 1 in South Group 2. It's in the power rankings, based on that huge win. That's a huge win for them as a Group 2 school to go to a 5 and get a W like that. So, Camden was in the rankings, I want to say it was about 2 weeks ago, dropped out after a loss to Shawnee. But, clearly has proven that, they are a championship caliber team, and they play a tough schedule. So they're legit, and they've got some players. They've got some tremendous size on the lines, and, a real nice running back tandem with Christian Braxton and Roman Duckett. Once they kind of start to get going a little bit more, which they haven't really done yet, Camden's going to be, they're a team that you don't want to really play, and Rob Hinson has taken them to sectional finals in the 3 years he's been there. So, like I said, Camden's always tough, not a team you want to see as they continue to get better. And then the other team you mentioned is St. Augustine. And, St. Augustine's kind of been in that, I want to say 14, 15 range all season long. There's not a team in South Jersey probably has suffered more injuries to the most important players than them, possibly Millville. Millville is really going through some struggles with injuries to some key guys, but St. Augustine last week they pull out a win over Mainland. A scoop and score towards the end of the game seals it for them. But you look at their team, and they played without their top offensive lineman in Cam Green. They played without their one or their two defensive linemen in Nick Costa, who's done for the season now after having ankle surgery. They've lost their number one running back, Roman Coney, did not play last week, didn't play in the second half against Winslow the week before. They still don't have their two top receivers who have been out since the start of the season. And who knows who may have got nicked up last week that we don't know about. So, for them to win games and have lost such key players shows you a little bit about the depth that they have. And the fact that, I guess, like a lot of coaches will say, and a lot of kids will say, it's the next man up, it's the next guy up, and one guy drops and somebody else has to fill that void. So, St. Augustine's schedule, like a few others, is not going to get any easier. They are in non-public A, so hopefully they get a couple guys back sooner than later, and they can really show what type of team they truly are. But it looks like right now, we don't know how good this St. Augustine team could potentially be, because we haven't seen it together. And, obviously with injuries, you never know from week to week. So we'll see what happens down the road. But they have, I believe they have a bye this week. So that gives them a little chance to rest up and we'll see what happens down the line.
And Mike Kinney, we've been having this discussion for the last couple of episodes. A couple episodes ago, when you were on the show, you were saying, hey, this is not a down year necessarily for the Big Central. It's all about competitive games, and that some of these teams have the opportunity to rise to the top and to become top 20 teams. Well, you have Phillipsburg, that they're right on the outside of the top 10. St. Joe's Metuchen, who I saw in person a couple of weeks ago, and by the way, am excited to then call the game in a couple of weeks, between themselves and Phillipsburg have done their job. Is this clearly the opportunity presenting itself for St. Thomas Aquinas? If they get done with Paramus Catholic, maybe that could be a third team from the conference that is worthy of position in the top 20.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think if they beat Paramus Catholic, then, eyes are open about the competition that they've played now. It's all, like I said, it's always a problem. They normally don't play teams that are among the hierarchy in New Jersey. So when they have a chance, like last year when they played Paramus Catholic, that sort of opened our eyes as a staff. And certainly the other guys who don't cover the Big Central, when they saw how they hung with them like that. And if they can beat them this year, then it gives credence to the record. And then we see that this is a team that probably can make a little bit of noise in the state tournament, and that's enough to be considered top 20. They play St. Joe's Metuchen in a couple of weeks too, and that's going to be a great game. So St. Joe's has a couple tough games. St. Thomas is going to have a couple tough games coming up, starting here with Paramus Catholic. So these are the tests for them to prove that they belong to be a top 20 team, which they've been in the past. They're just not there this year with what they've lost through graduation and through transfer. And right now they're trying to make a statement that we are still a top 20 team.
So again, a statement game on Friday night that we'll have for you here on NJ.com. So guys, after taking a look at the top 20 and making the case for some of your teams, now we take a look at some of the big games on the horizon for this upcoming week 6. Don Bosco Prep, number 1, taking on number 3, DePaul Catholic. Donovan, Don Bosco got through one Campanelli. Now they get another Campanelli this week And this is a lot possibly on the line for DePaul Catholic, a team that they feel like they've had the goods to maybe contend for that number one spot in our NJ.com top 20 without having the opportunity to take on a Bergen Catholic. Is this a chance for the Spartans with a win to leapfrog over Big Brother and have Nick Campanelli's Spartans sitting alone in number one in New Jersey?
It's a very fun way to think about it, and the honest answer is yes. DePaul should think of like there's no reason to imagine, especially with the results the last 2 years of DePaul beating Bosco, that DePaul can't win this game. And without all of the fanfare of the Bergen-Bosco rivalry, when I take a look at this game from a 1,000-foot view, there are a lot of similarities to me when we were previewing that Bergen-Bosco game, now that we're previewing Bosco DePaul. Bosco, it's not as dramatic of a losing streak that they had to Bergen, but it's last 2 years and it's painful losses due to, a lot of self-inflicted errors, turnovers each of the last 2 years, big plays given up each of the last 2 years. There was the pick six that Dylan Rona threw last year after Anthony Natoli hit him, which was for 5 yards. Unfortunate circumstance, but when it comes down to it, still a self-inflicted error. What Bosco did against Bergen was they corrected all of that in the span of 4 quarters. Didn't turn the ball over, was great on defense. We talked endlessly about it at the start of this episode. And it's to me, this is a similar game plan that they are going to need to use going into this game against DePaul. Is it flashy? Absolutely not. Does it work? We've seen it. We've seen it against the number one team in the state, against a team that was ranked top 25 nationally. Will they have to maybe make some more big plays in order to win? Possibly. We're not going to know that until this game hits off on Friday night. But we've seen Carson Shane connect with both Alvarez brothers on deep routes in games in past games this season. We've seen Kasai Thomas and Dante DeLuca rip off big runs. So we know that Bosco is capable of these big plays, but they're going to be happy just to churn yards and to chew clock all of the time. And again, I teased it before, but this defense hasn't played a quarterback as seasoned as Derek Zammit. And Logan Nagel is a beast on defense. So DePaul has the players to take down Bosco. It's just a matter of, will Bosco shoot themselves in the foot like they have in past years? All signs point to maybe, could DePaul pull this off potentially? But Bosco proved last week that they are not the same team that they were last year when making those mistakes.
So much on the line there in Alps Road. Should be a good one on Friday night. Ryan, 2 outstanding public school matchups in northern New Jersey on the horizon. You have a top 20 showdown, number 8 Oltapan taking on number 12 Northern Highlands, and then the Battle of Wayne in one of the most heated rivalries that's got a little more extra juice this year based on how good Wayne Hills has been. First, talk a bit about Oltapan and Northern Highlands, 2 teams that have had such a consistent run of dominance over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mistakenly told you 12 Northern Highlands are actually 10. It's a top 10 matchup now.
My apologies. Yeah.
No, that's my bad. I'm the one who put it in there. But these are, in my opinion, the 2 best public schools in the SFC. And depending on how you feel about P-Berg, maybe in all of North Jersey, although P-Berg did beat Highlands last year on that long distance field goal. This game between Highlands and OT last year was not close. Northern Highlands was licking their wounds after the injuries to Nate Johnson and Matt Boydell, and Oltapan won 27-0. But I think this game on Friday can go down to the wire, and much like the Ramapo game did 2 weeks ago, I think if I'm Oltapan, I continue to try to get my best players in space, which they've done so well. Shane Small, Leo Eder, Christakis Nicolo, Joey Crescitelli, 4 really good pass catchers for them and field stretchers. And Devin Radoian, the running back, very twitchy, 3-down running back. I think there's an advantage at the skill positions there. And, for Northern Highlands, I want to say there's an advantage on the offensive and defensive lines. And I've said it a bunch on the podcast. This team is playing with a high level of physicality. They have some serious size up front, and, not a lot of public schools can say that. And if I'm Coach Cord, I'm looking at, the Ramapo tape against Oltapan, and I'm finding ways to run the ball on NVOT like Ramapo did. Ramapo had 256 rushing yards in that game, and that should be the goal for Highlands, in my opinion. But then there's the Battle of Wayne. I mean, Wayne Hills, Wayne Valley on Friday at Valley. I'm going to be at this game. This was a tough call for me. I've seen both Northern Highlands and Ultapan. I've seen Don Bosco on film. I've seen DePaul in person. I've seen Wayne Valley in person. You know, they took it to Passaic Valley a couple weeks ago in the game I was at. But I've not gotten eyes on Wayne Hills yet, and I'm very excited to. Number 19 in our rankings. They could get to 6-0 for the first time in over a decade. Yes, the Chris Olsen days. It's been that long. This may be a vintage team for them. And they have two quarterbacks, Mike Fitzsimmons, James Wolfe, ton of juniors and sophomores standing out. Looking forward to seeing David Van Hook, Ethan Sikorsky, Evan Rappaport in the backfield. A ton of linebackers are really good on that team, including the coach's son. Can't wait to finally see those guys in action. Then there's Wayne Valley. I mean, a joy to watch a couple of weeks ago. And I think Chris Benaquista's goal is to keep Wayne Hills' offense off the field. Elizier Estevez, he's the bell cow running back. Jaden Cabrales, he's their slot back. And then you have Bryce Flower and Kyle Betts at tight end who keep the chains moving. So, you know, there's a lot of excitement around this Wayne Valley team too. And I think if they control the clock, if they make each drive count, they can win this game. And maybe, you know, I don't like we said, we don't do hypotheticals with the rankings, but maybe it's a win that could get them in the rankings. We're going to find out.
So that's going to be a fun one in the Battle of Wayne. And again, like you said, a top 10 showdown, Ultapan, Northern Highlands for some of that SFC supremacy in that public school matchup. And Mike Kinney, what are some big time games that you're looking forward to this weekend involving the teams that you cover in the Big Central or even involving Essex County?
Yeah, I mentioned the games before, certainly, and you know, Sayreville-Piscataway is right up there as the top one on Friday. That's where I'll be going. A game I'm really excited about is the one I'm going to cover on Saturday. That's Somerville at Summit. If you looked at last year's score, you'd say you must be an idiot going to that game. What could be appealing about that game at all? Because Somerville beat Summit 41-0 last year. Summit could not get its ground game going. Somerville was an outstanding senior-led team last year, and it's just a game that got away from Summit. Summit was a nice team. They started off 4-0. They faded a little bit because of some injuries. They ended up 5-4. Somerville rolled all season long, won its first 12 games, and then got to the Group 3 semifinals. And they lost 10 of their 11 starters on offense. So the guys who killed Summit last year, Brandon Pacheco, Brady Shear, Max Nosey, they're not there anymore. Summit doesn't have to worry about those guys. What they have to worry about is the unbelievable growth that's going on at Somerville under Matt Bloom with the young guys he's got. He's got a freshman at quarterback. His name is Dylan Bohm. He's only a freshman. Now, he's not throwing the ball a great deal, but he's throwing it more than Summit throws the ball. He's throwing about 55%. He's completing his passes for like 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. While he's doing that, Aiden Vesuvio Bush and Justin Bowen is doing a nice job of keeping the ground game going, keeping the chains moving for Somerville. And they're playing a similar defense the way they did last year, where they just attack the football. They get the ball from you. They do a nice job of knocking it down in the passing lanes and getting the ball back to the offense so the young guys can get their reps. The freshman's doing a tremendous job. Summit is also doing a tremendous job based on the fact that Cole Sable, the starting quarterback from last year's team, he's been hurt and he hasn't played yet. He should be back pretty soon, but he's been hurt. And Alex Schwerk, who is an outstanding running back, stepped in at quarterback for them. Now, Summit in their power eye doesn't throw the ball a whole lot anyway. It's not Kevin Costabo's style. They do love to run the ball, and almost by necessity now they're running it. And Alex Schwerk is the guy to have the ball in his hands. He's already rushed for almost 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's well over 2,000 yards rushing for his career. So that ground game is still stable. They've got experienced guys, clearing paths for him, and they've got other experienced backfields. Sophomore named Kuber Smaragowicz is doing a great job of running the ball. And Matt McKeever is another kid. He stepped in and played a little quarterback. He's running the ball. He catches the ball. So Summit is a tough, athletic team, much better than last year's team. And Somerville is not quite the team they were last year, but they're surprising me with their ability. They're 4-1. Summit's 5-0. So I'm really excited to see the freshmen, and I'm really excited to see now this Summit team, which I think can stand up against Somerville and give them, not only give them a great game, but probably beat them. That'd be my inclination. So that's a game I'm really looking forward to. It's a great Saturday game. over at Tatlock Field in Summit. So that's cool. Between the Piscataway and Sayreville game on Friday and that game on Saturday, I'm cool. Great weekend.
Sounds like great matchups on deck for you there, Mike. And Kevin, you talked about this matchup earlier in the show. You're having Haddonfield at West Deptford in one of the best rivalries around in South Jersey.
Yeah, Dan, we touched on it. There's a couple other games that are pretty good matchups in South Jersey this weekend. Some rivalry type games. You got a Woodstown and Pennsville on Thursday night, and Mainland and Ocean City play for what they kind of play the battle of the bridge, the bridge that connects the two schools, so to speak. And Cherokee plays Shawnee, but two games that really jump out at me. First was the Burlington Township, Burlington City game, both undefeated. We'll really get a chance to see what both teams are made of in this game. It's obviously it's a game between rival schools, and City being a Group 1 and undefeated right now, looking very, very good, and obviously Burlington Township in the top 20. But the big game, I guess, if you really want to look at it, is the West Deptford game against Haddonfield. And for years, people haven't, from between those two schools, haven't really referenced it as we're playing Haddonfield or we're playing West Deptford. No, we're playing the red team or we're playing Exit 32. They kind of have little nicknames for each other that go back quite a while. And West Deptford, like we talked about, a team that has scored an awful lot of points. And given the schedule that they've played, I can understand it. They've outscored the opponents 228-35. They are a very explosive offensive team. Haddonfield is going to give them their biggest challenge. I can't see Haddonfield not doing that. Frank Delano is too good of a coach to let West Deptford run wild. The thing with West Deptford is it's mostly been a ground team this year. Haddonfield has got to do a good job of controlling their offense and not allowing them to use their speed to get the outside, to get huge chunks of yardage. Zamir Davis, Bryce Wynn, and Cole Paskowitz have combined for 1,341 yards on the ground and 21 of the team's 22 rushing touchdowns. West Deptford has also rushed as a team for 1,556 yards. So you're looking at three kids with a monster percentage of their offense. So that's going to be the focus for Haddonfield. Haddonfield, on the flip side, has been much more balanced this season. They are almost a 50-50 team when it comes to running the ball or throwing the ball. Brody Leonard is their top running back. He has 311 yards and 3 touchdowns. Van Lefkowitz has thrown for 715 yards and 9 touchdowns. So, there's some balance there. Maybe it's a little bit more of a 60-40, but much more balanced than West Deptford's attack. The crowd's going to be there. The coaches, highly respect each other. The thing is, Haddonfield has owned West Deptford over the last 5 years. 3 of the games were 3 points or less. A 4th game was a touchdown. There was 1 semi-blowout in that last 5 games. So the kids know each other. This is old school Colonial Conference teams. Pretty much play each other every year regardless. And it's just one of those games where, like we said before, the records overall records you can kind of throw out the window. They're going to be both at each other. The team that controls its temper, so to speak, doesn't make the stupid penalties after a play. The teams that can control the football and do what they do best is going to be the team that walks away with a win. I could see this game being another really close one, maybe a field goal. So we'll see what happens. It is a traditional rivalry game, like the type of game you probably would like to see on Thanksgiving. So we'll see what happens. Clearly, a great atmosphere, I think, is going to be there. And, I think Haddonfield win on the road would be great for their resume, would be great for their confidence. A West Deptford win, I think, really solidifies them as a team to watch and a team to be in the conversation when it comes playoff time.
So a lot of great game choices as we now move from September into the month of October here in New Jersey high school football. Reminder, fans, that from the opening kickoff to the end of the season, NJ.com's award-winning staff of reporters and photojournalists put you in the middle of the action. For in-depth coverage of all these games around New Jersey, including photo galleries, recaps, and stats, be sure to visit NJ.com/HS Sports. And a reminder, fans, that you can continue to follow New Jersey high school football on our NJ.com broadcasts. As we mentioned, we'll be on Friday at St. Thomas Aquinas for what should be a good one between themselves and Paramus Catholic with a kickoff at 6 p.m. And we're still working on solidifying our game of the week on Saturday, but we might have a very good chance of going to where Mike is going to be for that big-time game in Summit. So we'll find out with you as well. But remember, you can watch the games live and also on demand anytime if you're an NJ.com subscriber at NJ.com/watch. So that'll do it for another edition of the Jersey Blitz. A reminder, fans, that you could be part of the action going forward this season on the show. If you have any comments, questions, or want to have the guys debate something on the upcoming episodes, then make sure to have hashtag Jersey Blitz on any questions or comments that you want to leave on X for our guys. We'll try to incorporate that in the next show. So again, hashtag Jersey Blitz, and then you could have your comments read on the next show. So I'd like to thank all of the guys that joined me here for this episode, and Ryan Patti, Donovan Hugel, Mike Kinney, and Kevin Minnick. I'd like to thank David Liss for being the engineer here for our broadcast. So for everybody, I'm Dan Long saying so long and enjoy your New Jersey football this upcoming weekend, and for listening to the Jersey Blitz. Take care, everybody.